Hi, I'm Scott Leadingham. Thanks for joining us here in the unique Northwest. It is election season in 2019, an off-year election, you might say, and so all politics this year is local. So city council races and mayor's races are the focus of this year. Jacob Jones of Whitman County Watch is here to tell us about some of the things coming down the pipe in Whitman County. Jacob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So just tell us maybe kind of county-wide in the area that you cover here on the Palouse, what are some of the issues generally that you've been seeing?
Sure. A lot of the discussion this year has revolved around different housing issues, economic development. There's a number of sort of key municipal positions, mayors and such that are going to be turning over as new candidates step into uncontested races. There's a lot of discussion about revitalizing downtowns in some of these smaller communities, trying to fill vacant storefronts, and looking for building sort of long-term growth, getting kids involved, and trying to sort of plan for sort of a stronger future, I guess.
Let's look specifically at a few towns here on the Palouse. Colfax, you were at a candidate forum and you've been following that race. What are some of the issues specifically in Colfax, which is the seat of Whitman County?
Right. So Colfax is going to have a new mayor for the first time in 8 years. Their previous mayor is not running. There is a candidate, James Retzer, that is a state patrol trooper. He's running unopposed, and there's a number of contested city council seats. They've been talking a lot about how to address some interpersonal conflicts they've had at City Hall, in addition to revitalizing their main street and sort of trying to build economic development.
So there's a couple who are, I'm not sure if they're married or not, but there are a couple who are running for two separate city council seats. So not against each other, that would be interesting, but separate seats on the city council, which is interesting. I'm not sure how common that is in cities or small towns. But I wonder if there's been anyone questioning whether that's a violation of like open meeting laws for if they were both elected to go home and talk about stuff, city business. Has that issue come up?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique issue. There's actually two different couples that are running for two different seats. Again, they're not running against each other, but there are some concerns that would create sort of a little mini voting block of these couples. Those couples have tried to assure voters that they're independently minded, that they're going to still weigh things sort of fairly as individuals, and that open meeting law usually requires a quorum of the council to be present to prohibit any sort of discussion.
Interesting one to follow. You probably don't hear about that too often. Two separate couples.
Yeah, there's a lot of councils I've seen that have family members, uncles or brothers and stuff, but having actual couples running, I think, is a little rare.
Well, on a similar but not exactly the same note, but staying in Colfax, you just published at the Whitman County Watch a long story involving some of the allegations and things going back and forth within City Hall between the mayor and other people who work for the city. In fact, they were calling it Dysfunction Junction, something you might hear on Schoolhouse Rock. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on there.
So earlier this year, the mayor fired the police chief over some alleged hiring practices, and that turned into a longer civil service commission process to appeal that decision. That has really brought forth a couple of years worth of conflicts over how budgets were managed, over allegations that people were lying about how they handled things, over allegations of people retaliating or abusing power. So a lot of conflict, a lot of tension that's led to turnover and low morale and missed opportunities at City Hall.
So is that an ongoing, is investigation the right word, or is there more to come on that, or is there just, is that it? And new mayor, it's all going to be solved?
Well, a lot of the mayor is turning over, but a lot of the department heads are the same. The police chief was reinstated by that Civil Service Commission. The finance director, who also serves as the city administrator, is still there. A lot of those same people are there trying to, I would imagine, trying to find a way to move forward. The police chief also has a lawsuit that he's filed a claim against the city for about $5 million. So there's still a lot of things that need to get worked out there.
All right, let's move a little bit down 195 to Pullman, the largest town city in Whitman County by a long shot. What are the issues playing out in Pullman? Obviously an interesting dynamic, as always, with the university element and all that brings with students and regular town folk. What's going on? What are some of the big issues there?
A lot of the concerns in Pullman have to do with housing and development. There's been a number of sort of outside developers who have put forth proposals to build large student housing complex, multi-story apartment buildings, big, sort of townhouse developments, probably 4 or 5 of those in the last year, that have people concerned about smart growth, about how that affects the long-term zoning, traffic issues in town. They know that the community doesn't have a very high vacancy rate in housing. There are a lot of affordable housing concerns, and the university student population has continued to grow. So there's definitely some tension there between knowing that there's some need for capacity, but wanting to do that in a way that doesn't impact the neighborhoods as they are.
I've heard this said before, and I wonder if you can comment on it, or just if you've seen this issue in your coverage and business owners you might talk to in Pullman specifically, that the development seems to be, or people have a feeling that the development is focused on student growth for students, or growth as it is tied to the university. A lot of the housing is tied to that factor, whether it be students, grad students, or maybe faculty and staff who are moving to Pullman for those jobs. But not a lot of focus on development for the rest of Pullman, for attracting businesses who are coming here to just be a business in Pullman. And I wonder if you've heard from business owners who are kind of maybe dismayed at not the idea of development, but who the development is for.
Yeah, there's definitely some concerns that the development that is there is kind of going for where the perceived money is as far as targeting students. There's been more demand for single-family homes, that kind of residential development you're talking about. As far as business development and zoning goes, the city's been working for a number of years to try to overhaul its comprehensive plan, which was last completely rewritten in 1999. But that would set out a lot of the sort of future zoning potential for mixed-use properties or new retail spaces, that kind of thing. Another issue that plays into that is the conflict between some of the city staff and the city council over who is kind of driving some of those decisions. I think councilors have been talking recently about trying to be a little bit more hands-on with how some of those development decisions and zoning applications have been handled, because they're feeling some of that pressure from the public to open up that process.
You've also done a lot of coverage on issues of public safety and police accountability and oversight in the city of Pullman and elsewhere. I wonder if that's come up in the election coverage of people being concerned about some of the issues in the City of Pullman Police Department. I'm thinking specifically about former officer Dan Hargraves, whose sexual assault trial recently ended in a mistrial, a hung jury. But have those issues and others involving police accountability come up?
Yeah, the Hargraves trial is definitely a thing that a lot of people have been discussing. The prosecutor recently decided to not pursue a second trial on that case after the victim made it clear that she didn't want to go through the process of testifying again. And there's been some public outrage from the WSU student community and others about that decision. Public safety has certainly been a high-profile issue in Colfax, where they've had the police chief being terminated and then reinstated, and they've had a lot of turnover there. And staffing shortages at the department, where they've had to contract with the sheriff's office to take over some of their patrol shifts just to make sure that the city is covered. So citizens there certainly want to make sure that that police department is functioning and providing the kind of public safety coverage that they expect.
So public safety, city council, those aren't the only issues on a ballot, and it's not like there aren't other issues like propositions and initiatives. One thing that people might be familiar with in the state of Washington, of course, is Initiative 976, which is basically another car tabs repeal to make it $30 flat for everyone. And a lot of cities and counties are nervous about that in terms of how that would fund their tax structures, police departments, roads, those sorts of things. But that's not the only initiative involving roads and taxation. There's one specific to Whitman County, I understand, that might be of interest to people, and explain that if people are unfamiliar.
Yeah, Whitman County is running a levy lid lift to raise the amount of property taxes that they're able to collect to support their road maintenance and operations budget, basically. The county officials say that they're gonna hopefully be able to bring in another $1.4 million to fund some additional positions, to pay for more gravel road maintenance operations, and to do some other sort of proactive kind of bridge and culvert replacement work that they have been doing more on a reactive basis at this point. County officials point out that right now the county receives more state funding back from gas taxes and the like than they collect locally. They get that back from the state. And right now they're basically limited in collecting those road property taxes at a rate that doesn't keep up with inflation. So they're trying to bump up how much they're collecting so that they can sort of invest in some of those maintenance operations for the future.
Well, anyone who's ever spent a winter on the Palouse, especially last winter, they know that road maintenance is a very important and big issue around here. So,
absolutely, the snow removal costs in the last couple of years have really sort of pinched that regular maintenance budget, it sounds like.
Well, Jacob Jones of Whitman County Watch, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You can see more of Jacob's coverage at whitmancountywatch.com, and there you can consider being a member and supporting his coverage. And for more Northwest news, you can come to our website, nwpd.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.